average of 20 veterans and service members take their lives every single day. Every veteran, I want you to know that you have an entire nation of more than 300 million people behind you. You will never, ever be forgotten. I am launching the Prevents Initiative. They kept us safe, and we're going to keep them safe. Where's Frank? Here you go,
Yesterday, hundreds of worshipers were gathered at Real Life Ministries when a Gulf War veteran took his own life right outside the church doors. 59-year-old Dale Ballou had suffered from a debilitating illness for years. He spoke out against the lack of help from the Veterans Administration.
Idaho Congresswoman tried to help him against the Spokane VA, a case against the Spokane VA. He suffered from Gulf War syndrome.
Somebody in Congress, the decision makers, need to come online. Yes, I'm not one of those weirded out, crazed, insane veterans, sitting on some park looking whacked out.
Dale Ballou lived with physical and emotional pain for decades.
So, they don't want to deal with it.
Yesterday, standing next to this cross outside Real Life Ministries Church in Post Falls, he chose to end his life while churchgoers were locked down inside.
It's like they don't care.
We are deeply saddened whenever we hear about a tragedy among one of the veterans in our communities.
The Spokane VA said today this is not a common occurrence and they take veteran suicides very seriously.
Suicide is a complex issue. It's not a simple decision that somebody makes. There are usually a lot of risk factors that build into it. Providing mental health care to our veterans is one of the main pieces of work that we do here at the VA.
But not enough to save Ballou, who 17 years ago began asking for help for this disease.
Sad because we deserve to be taken care of.
Suicide crisis hits our veterans with particular force. A new report from a psychiatric emergency clinic shows that when veterans are suicidal, doctors often miss it. In fact, 53% of the time veterans show up at the clinic, they write down that they're suicidal. But the psychiatrist's notes show that doctors are only picking up on it 21% of the time.
If you want to help the veterans, and especially the suicidal guys, unless you've been there, it's almost impossible.
You've heard the research and you've heard from some veterans. What do you think? I'm Morgan Campbell, and this is Brainsplain.
Robert Nielsen was drafted in 1961. He spent 2 years in the Army just before the Vietnam War. He was recently at the VA in San Diego as part of his treatment. 3 years ago, the 76-year-old came into the VA after contemplating suicide.
That's what brought me into the emergency room, because that wasn't really the first time. 2 months after I got out of the service, I attempted suicide.
Back then, Nielsen remembers standing on a subway platform watching a speeding train.
And I just figured if I just hold my hands up in the air, I could just let it suck me. Because somebody shouted, "What are you doing?" And that snapped me out of that trance, and I just walked out of the subway.
I'm a Vietnam-era sailor. I had every intention to going to Vietnam and ended up on submarines off the coast of the Soviet Union. So I couldn't have been farther from that. So I was a Vietnam era. I'm not a Vietnam veteran. Okay, I was in Desert Storm, but I wasn't in combat. We're constantly talking about what we're not quite.
Veterans struggling with suicide aren't always wrestling with memories of combat. Stark suffered from depression most of his life. He remembers sitting by the roadside with a pistol while he was still on active duty.
The military didn't make me who I was.
But the military establishes lifelong habits, both good and bad. You want to be someone people can rely on.
You have a bad day at work, you can go home. You have a bad day on a submerged submarine, people die.
So if you're not feeling 100%, maybe it's better just to keep that to yourself. Stark describes suicidal feelings as a brief moment of blackness when all other options fade from view. Get past that, and a veteran is likely to survive. The VA is focused on finding risk factors: isolation, previous suicidal thoughts. Colin Depp, a psychologist at the VA in San Diego, says the problem is researchers don't know, among the people who have those risk factors, who will actually attempt suicide.
We're not very far ahead in terms of understanding who's out there who's really likely to take their lives in the next hours, days, months.
In one VA program, Robert Nielsen, the vet who was 73 before he sought treatment for himself, is now writing letters of encouragement to fellow veterans who are just beginning treatment. Pulling out one of those letters, Nielsen explains how he can help a veteran that he'll never meet in person.
What does it mean to, for somebody to have faith in me? How about that? We open this one. I don't know you, but I have faith in you. You're going to make it.
The letters are just one more nudge to keep veterans away from that dark moment when suicide feels like the only option.
You've heard the research and you've heard from some veterans. What do you think?